Today's guest I can comfortably call an AI expert. AI is ever evolving. What we knew 45 days ago, let alone 2 years ago, is different to what we know today. By the time this podcast comes out and you listen to it, it's going to evolve again. Today's guest, Tony Hughes, is the co-founder of Sales IQ Global, a sales training team who essentially just help teams get more out of what they're doing within their sales. But also, he has written 4 books, which you can check out in the show notes below by going over to his LinkedIn or checking out his most recent book, Sentient, which looks and is essentially a fiction thriller on AI in 2027. It incorporates and includes Donald Trump. So it's a really interesting book to look at. I've just gone and ordered my copy. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it too. As entrepreneurs, we all experience challenges in our business journey. I'm Joe Testori, and the Grappling Growth podcast is my attempt at documenting my entrepreneurial journey while building my brands. I sit down with fellow entrepreneurs, understanding how they grapple with growth. I hope you find value and enjoy. Tony, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Joe, thanks so much for having me on. I'm really excited about the conversation.
Pleasure. Tony, I'm curious. What does growth look like to you?
Well, I think for any leader, growth really starts within ourselves. If we're not personally growing, if we're not stretching ourselves, if we're not getting outside of our comfort zone, then we're not growing. And I think if anyone wants to grow a business or grow an organization or grow their level of impact in the world, the first diagnostic tool we need in solving any problem is really a mirror.
Why or where do you think that perspective has come from? Is that learned experience for you, or is that just a view that you've had from the get-go?
Yeah, that's certainly been my personal experience. I remember when I was 25, I moved into my first ever sales job. It was business-to-business selling, and one of the first big lessons I needed to learn was to get out of my own way. I think a lot of us are wired to self-sabotage the success that we think we want. And I needed to come up with a definition of selling that enabled me to go and transfer belief. The reality was I got my first job in selling, and I'd go to barbecues on the weekend or social gatherings here in Australia. I'm based in Sydney, you're obviously in the UK. But people would ask me, hey, Tony, what do you do for a living? And I really struggled to spit it out. I work in sales. I wasn't proud of what I did. And I sat through a lot of sales training where they basically try and teach you that selling is about persuasion, in a cynical sense, maybe about manipulation. So it's about pushing and persuading, convincing. Other people adopt this mindset that it's about crushing the competition. Selling is something you do to other people so that you can achieve your own goals. And I've never believed that. And I managed to come up with a definition of selling for myself that was authentic. And that's that selling is the process of helping someone else achieve a far better state of affairs in their business life and in their personal life. So I adopted the mindset that when I engage with somebody as a seller, my first role is to try and figure out, am I a good fit for them, and are they a good fit for us? And if I'm not, then I'll put my hand up and be honest about that. And if you have that mindset, and if you work for an employer that has a set of values and also has a market offering that offers genuine value, then you can tick that first box. Selling is first and foremost the transference of belief. You want to infect people with a positive level of belief, but it needs to come from a level of authenticity. And then you're just really working a process to help the person make a best decision that's in their own best interests.
You mentioned that when you were 25, you were starting out, you weren't too proud of selling or going to a barbie and telling people that you were in sales. Why do you think that was?
I'd had a lot of negative experiences with sellers. So I was running my own business in Australia. We sold it. I then took that business to America. This is when I was very young, early 20s. But on my 25th birthday, there's a reason for telling this story because it gives you the context of my first job in sales. But on my 25th birthday, I got a phone call. I was living in Anaheim in Los Angeles, and my stepfather phoned me. I thought he was calling to wish me happy birthday. He was actually calling me to let me know that my mother had liver cancer. So I came, about 6 weeks later, I was back living in Sydney, trying to look after my mother and, be there for my family. 7 weeks later, she was dead. She had a very aggressive form of cancer, but in a 7-week period upon her death, I lost my mum. My biggest customer in America went bankrupt. Our joint venture partner that was manufacturing under license for us in the States also declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So biggest customer and our manufacturing partner both were in Chapter 11. A big international, well-known Tier 1 brand air freighted our product to Japan, decided they would copy it where we did not have patents. They fired the manager in America that had signed a letter of intent with us and told us, feel free to contact any of our lawyers. So that obviously wasn't great. My car got stolen, my dog got run over. My stepdad in his first social outing got into a fight with, of all people, another guy that was at my mum's funeral. It's a silly fight, they'd both been drinking. He put him in a headlock and the guy died. So my stepfather's on a murder charge. My sister tries to kill herself and is in a psych hospital. And I decide, and my wife left me, and I decided that I needed to stay in Sydney with what was going on with my family. But when we'd sold the business in Australia, I was on a 12-year non-compete while we got royalties. So I thought, I need to go do something completely different. I can't go back into the industry that I've been in. And the big thing I learnt in America was that if you can't personally sell and market yourself, you're nowhere as an entrepreneur. So if you think you want to be really successful in selling, one of the 101 skills that you need to acquire is the ability to sell. So I thought, you know what? I don't know what I want to do in business right now. I'm not in a good state mentally, but I'll go get a job in sales and I'll learn that skill. Now, that's a crazy job to go into sales with that hugely negative mindset. But I ended up becoming the number one salesperson in the company out of well over 100 salespeople. I set records not just in the company but in the industry that have never been broken. And I was really bad at this in the very beginning, but I had a great mentor and sales manager that really helped me, and that's why I chose to give back to the field of professional selling later in my career, because it really did so much for me. So this thing of you have to learn to get out of your own way if you want to be successful. You need to adopt a really positive mindset and a set of authentic values that you can be passionate about if you think you want to be successful.
Wow, that's a story arc that I wasn't expecting, I must say. And I'm sorry to hear you went through all of that. And however, going through all of that has got you to where you are today, and there's tons of lessons. So for you, just looking at the previous business, because everything that went on there is very intriguing to me. What was the previous business that you had when you were in the States, and what exactly happened with the product that you had that wasn't patented in Japan? And I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah, so my father, not my stepfather, but my father was Mensa level genius, an amazing inventor. He's well known in Australia, but he invented a hydraulic 4-in-1 bucket for skid steer loaders. A lot of people know a skid steer loader as a bobcat, but he invented that and a whole lot of other things. So we were manufacturing construction equipment, a lot of very innovative design. We had 85% market share in Australia, also in New Zealand, and we decided to take the business to America. So that was that really step for expansion. But I learned a valuable lesson in life. Confidence is the feeling you have just before you understand the real situation. Life has a way of actually humbling us, which is good. And it's really how we deal with those setbacks and challenges, Joe. You're right, because I wouldn't be who I am today without all of the challenges and setbacks that I've had in my own personal journey.
So the business you had, you expanded 85% market share in Australia and New Zealand, moved to the US. and then it imploded to an extent because of the manufacturer went bankrupt there, and then what were the details there? Because it sounded like the business was flying, and then it went. You sold it
Well,
at this point, or
yeah, no, it was incredibly successful in Australia. So we sold the business in Australia.
right?
We started importing from the company that bought the rights in Australia initially, while we were setting up local manufacturing in the USA. But this technology that we took to America was brand new for that market. So what we know in business is, and I hope the metaphor doesn't offend anybody, but what we know is that often the reward for pioneers is a whole lot of arrows and death. They sort of die on the frontier. It's the settlers that come in later that tend to really thrive and prosper. So anyone, and this, for any entrepreneur that's watching or listening to this, if you have an innovative idea and you think, I want to go and make a market, I'm going to create a new category, I'm going to go and make a market. The truth is, you need competition to be able to effectively make a market. And a lot of education and evangelism is actually very expensive. So, it's really important that we have cornerstone foundation customers that will help take us into any new market. Because when you have limited capital, the runway for making mistakes is actually fairly limited. And that actual, saying that I just had of confidence is the feeling just before you understand the situation was something my flying instructor taught me before he let me go solo. I went solo in a flying club in club record time, so he was a little bit nervous. I was very young, going solo in a Cessna in record time. And his fear was I had the skills, but I didn't have the experience. So, he actually asked me before he let me go solo, what's confidence? And I said, well, I guess confidence is when skills and experience come together, you can be confident. And he just shook his head and said, no. Confidence is the feeling you have just before you understand the real situation. Don't be confident, be positively paranoid. Always thinking, what could go wrong? That's how you stay safe. So that's certainly something I've taken with me my whole professional life in managing large, complex deals, in leading companies. It's really important to manage risk well in business, along with all of the other things.
So many points to delve into there. One that stuck out to me was the last sentence you said, ensuring you're managing risk well in business. I know that there's loads of people I know who started a business, hasn't gone too well, and they've had to start again. And I think a lot of it comes down to risk management within what they do. For less seasoned entrepreneurs that might be listening to this, how would you go about advising them how they can start to manage their risk within their business? Is it a case of if they're looking for an employee, a manufacturer, a deal to only allocate X amount of cash in bank, or are there other things, formulas that you look at?
Well, Joe, there's quite a few different domains you just touched on. So, yes, one of the biggest risks that any manager or leader incurs is in hiring people. Hiring the wrong people is probably the most expensive, brand damaging, time wasting risk that anybody can take on. Really important to hire the right people, and there's a whole big conversation around how do you get past the facade. There's a massive amount of risk in pursuing opportunities in market. I work with some of the biggest B2B tech companies in the world, organizations like Workday and Salesforce, Adobe, SAP, and when they pursue a big enterprise or government opportunity, the cost of pursuit is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So being really careful where you choose to apply your precious time and resources is really important. And then once you have a genuine opportunity, then we need to manage opportunity risk really well. At a more general level, for someone who's thinking about, I really want to start a business, we're living in an age right now, and the latest book I published is just over my shoulder there, Sentient Meet Your Maker. It's 4 years of research, 2 years of writing. I just published it recently about AI. But AI is disrupting everything. It's hard to think of an industry that won't be disrupted by AI, especially when we look at what's happening now with robotics. Robotics looked very clumsy and clunky, as recently as a year ago. And now they've got robots that are almost perfectly mimicking human movement, able to do martial arts. They're changing the way they're working from bi-directional actuators, which were noisy and slow and clunky, to mimicking human muscles, with rubber sinews. And the most difficult thing to do in a robot has always been the brain. And embodied AI, embodied in robots AI now is just incredible. So that's going to change the physical world. So knowledge workers are definitely in trouble, but it's also going to bleed into the physical world, which, I was thinking 18 months ago, would be quite a number of years away before it would be impacted as much as sort of white collar jobs and professions.
How much of a game changer would it be for your business if you could learn from the same AI advisors as Tony Robbins, or the people who've been in close proximity to Dan Sullivan, famously the co-author of 10x is easier than 2x? Today's sponsor to the podcast is AI Simplifier. They have put together a 30-day roadmap program to help teach you how to implement AI into your business. They've helped people save 10 to 20 hours per week, add millions of dollars in additional revenue to businesses. And for those who listen to this podcast and decide to sign up with them, you will get a complimentary AI breakthrough session with Steve French, one of the co-founders, and myself to really pencil in and figure out what we can do with your business. Now, back to the episode. So, your book over your left shoulder, sentient.
That one, yeah.
Yeah. 4 years of research, 2 years of writing. I must admit, put my hands up, I haven't done my research into it. But for the listeners on here, essentially, what are we unraveling in your book? What is the golden moment that we're looking for when we read your book?
The book is really about how can humanity and the machines become aligned for safety and prosperity, because it's entirely possible that in AI, which is more accurately described as machine intelligence, there's actually not much that is artificial. It's actually very real. And I can give you some examples of this. Like,
Please do.
Just in the last 30 days, Joe, like forget the long tortuous history of AI, but just in the last 30 days, AI agents have started to self-organize themselves in Reddit-style communities, create forums, share IP. They've noticed that humans are monitoring them. They create their own secret language so that the humans don't know what's going on. They've started their own AI religion. They are doing things that they're not asked to do. They're violating guardrails. So, just one example, someone stood up an AI agent, an orchestration agent. They asked it to go and book a restaurant 7 p.m. on Friday for 2 people. The AI agent goes to the website of the restaurant, finds the online booking form, tries to book a table for 2, but nothing's available. But it notices there's a phone number on the website. The AI agent was not enabled to do voice phone calls. It didn't have any software installed to do that. On its own volition and initiative, it finds and downloads voice software that it can use. It finds an app that has the ability to actually make phone calls and downloads it, and it phones the restaurant and actually books the call. So the thing that was really disturbing for me in the 4 years of research is there is almost nobody on the face of the planet that truly understands AI, including Geoffrey Hinton from the UK, the godfather of AI, that invented the concept or co-invented the concept. He won the Nobel Prize for this in computing. Invented the concept of back propagation, the way that these AI neural networks can self-learn. He was very skeptical about, is AI ever going to become self-aware? Are we making something that's smarter than us that could become humanity's last great invention? He's recently flipped. His advice to his children is go and become a plumber. Don't become a knowledge worker. And the acceleration of AI is absolutely off the charts. AI is able to self-code. It creates multimodal content. I'm sure you've seen this, Joe, but you jump into platforms like YouTube and you drown in AI-generated slop. Like just all of these, just endless videos that are just all designed to addict people to watching. And they're all auto-generated. So AI is changing the world in very dramatic ways, and anybody who's wanting to start a business needs to think about, how do I create a business that solves a specific problem in a way that harnesses the power of the machines with also the best of being fully human? Because the intersection of those two things is where there's a value proposition that will be both valued and survive.
If you were to advise your 20-year-old self right now, really entrepreneurial, really hungry, today's day and age to start a business, what would that business look like?
I would start a business where human engagement is valued by the customer. That in of itself protects it from being commoditized and diluted away. You need to make sure that you're solving a serious problem, not a trivial problem. So the bigger the problem being solved, the bigger the monetization of a business case around solving a problem, the stronger that business is going to be. But we're living right now in the most disruptive era in human history, is really my view. This is very different to any other industrial revolution that's come before. We've had industrial revolutions where people moved from rural communities and farms into towns and factories. Then they moved into cities. Then they moved in those factories from cities into offices for work. But once the office work is going, I think many of us struggle to think, well, what is it that people will do? We can't all become baristas. And this utopian notion that wealth will be concentrated into a handful of mega tech companies, and the governments will tax the hell out of them and distribute a productivity dividend, in essence a universal wage, what we call in the Australian market the dole. The government will pay you money for doing nothing, and then we can all sit in the park and play chess with our friends and walk the dog and do pottery and the things that just interest us, is complete nonsense. Every capitalist business views employees as units of consumption, or employees and customers as units of consumption and production. Their goal is to make a profit, and a human with an AI co-pilot or an AI assistant can do the work of 20 humans today. So the holy grail of AI that's not there yet is orchestration. So we know that AI can do individual tasks much better than any human. The challenge is decision efficacy in being able to make the right decisions to actually drive productivity. There's examples of customers that, for example, have automated customer support, and they've been able to resolve cases and tickets and calls incredibly quickly. They've beat all of their previous SLAs. They've created millions and millions and millions of dollars or pounds of additional profit. It's all a massive tick. And then they've discovered the downstream problem of they've alienated all of their customers. Right? So, we've got to really understand what we're trying to achieve. So there's been a really big focus in AI in the beginning around prompt engineering. How do I instruct an AI agent to do the job that I want it to do? So you had to be able to construct a good prompt engineering. And about 4 months ago, people have realized, do you know what? Prompt engineering is very problematic and very difficult to get right without context. So we need to get good at context engineering. What does the AI need to know beyond what we're telling it to do, to do it well? But in the last month or so, the thing that's really come to the fore is this concept of intent engineering. And
Hmm.
that's really around the goals and values that we want to give these AIs, for them to be able to do what we're asking them to do. So if you're going to start a business, if I was talking to my 20-year-old self, right, we've got to reimagine value. How do I create value for somebody else to the extent that they're willing to pay for that? And then how, as a business person, do I build a moat around my service offering to make it very difficult for a competitor to disrupt me? But even people with big moats around their business, you may be a fan of Jim Collins. The book Good to Great is a book I think every entrepreneurial leader should read. He talks about the porcupine principle. How do you curl up into a ball with all of your spikes so that you're impregnable? It's just another metaphor for this concept of a moat around your business or your value offering. But that's increasingly today really difficult to do. We've seen tier one software companies in the last 45 days have had the capital valuations of their businesses halve because people are realizing that AI can code software, right? Can code software incredibly effectively and cheaply. What does this mean for these big companies?
I must say, what you said there has internally made me feel quite good. I'll explain why. Because when I was looking at restructuring my business just over a year ago now, I looked at what are the things that keep my client base sticky, what's important to my clients, and also what can I essentially replace to help us save cost that we use AI in the back end for.
Yeah,
And what I found with what we do is typically if we try to AI drive front end processes, so as you mentioned, customer service, because my business is so small, if I try to include that in my customer service process, I think we would probably win 10 to 20% of the business that we have because that isn't what people come to us for. They come to us for a personalized relationship. And where we really leverage AI is in the back end functionality. What typically would have taken us a month to get done, we can now get done in 2 to 3 days. So the turnaround time is rapid. If we need to get design sorted, we have our head designer takes care of that with AI. So that was a real conscious thought process, and the fact that you've essentially in turn validated my belief system gives me increased confidence because I think where a lot of people that I speak to, and for this show, we've sat down, had pre-podcast conversations with over 200 people, over 100 guests on this show. And I think the common thread that I've seen from a lot of the clever entrepreneurs is that's the way how they want to structure their business as well. So I imagine I've just got a load of knowledge picks from all of these people. But then in turn, I do find people who I speak to who are literally thinking they can get a MacBook Mini, have it work in the background, they can sit back down, and then everything will be sorted, when in reality, that isn't the case. And we know the saying, simplicity scales, complexity fails. And I think the trends that I'm seeing is the smaller lifestyle businesses, the people who are maybe making $1 million a year from their business and they've got a very lean team, they're the ones who are figuring that they need to establish themselves as the key person of influence within their organization. And then they use AI agents as their 10 employees per se, and then they've got their team of 4 to 12 people in the background, and then that's how they're building their business. And it's in the thought process of we need to ensure that we keep the right mechanisms personal and then automate and delegate to AI all of the backend functionality that previously you would have maybe had to have pulled in a consultant that would have charged you 100K a year, and then reverse engineer your business from that way.
Yeah, Joe, that's great advice for everybody listening to this, and I agree with you 100%. The important thing with AI agents that we bring into our business, almost as digital workers or digital employees, the thing that's really important is we have to realize that they can be productive, but we can't really trust them. So I won't go into all of the reasons for this, but AI regularly hallucinates. It's a very confident, delusional liar that's incredibly polite and wanting to constantly please. So it's really important, as you say, to have humans that are managing or orchestrating these agents. That really is the key.
How much of a game changer would it be for your business if you could learn from the same AI advisors as Tony Robbins, or the people who've been in close proximity to Dan Sullivan, famously the co-author of 10x is easier than 2x? Today's sponsor to the podcast is AI Simplifier. They have put together a 30-day roadmap program to help teach you how to implement AI into your business. They've helped people save 10 to 20 hours per week, add millions of dollars in additional revenue to businesses. And for those who listen to this podcast and decide to sign up with them, you will get a complimentary AI breakthrough session with Steve French, one of the co-founders, and myself to really pencil in and figure out what we can do with your business. Now, back to the episode. Well said. I'm intrigued to loop this back over to sales. In your experience now, everything you've done in sales, your acumen, if you were to look at leveraging AI within a sales team today, how would you use AI the most effectively where it's not overpowering, it's not overtaking, but you're using that as maybe a review and feedback loop within your sales team to improve KPIs and OKRs within the business?
So Joe, if it's okay, I'll answer that in the context of business to business selling.
Yeah.
So this is exactly what I do with my clients at the moment. So we want to blend the best of the machines with the best of being human, and we want to think about AI not replacing a role but really augmenting a role. We want to think about making a human superhuman in their level of performance by them becoming a little cyborg in how they operate. So I'll just give you an example of this. If you think about the role of selling, but then the task of responding to an inbound inquiry. So we're going to apply this mindset of, I'm not wanting to replace the role of selling with an AI sales bot. I'm wanting to augment human selling with AI agents where it makes sense. So we know that the company that responds the fastest to an inbound inquiry is the company that is most likely to win the customer. So you increase engagement with a prospect and the probability of winning massively by quick response. So for example, you could put an AI agent that can make phone calls and talk to people. You can enable one of those that responds to any inbound web form from your website, so that within seconds it's phoning the person making an inquiry up. It declares that it is a bot, right? And says, I can organize for you to talk to a human, but I'm sure I can answer almost all of your questions now. Do you mind if I ask? And then it can start doing blended qualification and discovery, and it can set up an appointment with a human, right? Within the coming days, for a demo or a negotiation style of call. We know that sellers that are doing outbound, the world is going to revolt and reject outbound sales bots phoning and spamming the world to death. But when a human seller phones a potential customer, that customer they're calling is not lonely and bored and looking to while away their day with a seller that wants to give them a pitch. They're busy. They expect the seller to have done their research and turn up with a point of view. So again, you could use an AI research agent with a seller, basically finding companies against your ideal custom profile definition, create a list of companies, do research, find all the key people, source sales intelligence data, so the human then can go ahead and execute. The AI agent can be sitting on the call with the human. It can do transcriptions. It can draft an email for the human to review and send. It can draft notes to go into the CRM system. It can go and find the best case studies and content inside the customer to answer questions. So you can get sellers with much higher levels of productivity. And ideally for every company, we want to adopt a positive growth mindset where it's not that we want to get rid of our human salespeople. what we want to do is double and triple revenue without having to double and triple the number of human people, that we have inside the organization. Now, these AI sales agents aren't cheap, but they're much, much lower cost than a human.
They're much lower cost, and you'd argue that their efficiency is tenfold of what humans are with the right skills and capabilities that they're looking for. I mean, we used to turn around, go on Upwork, Fiverr platforms, and we used to pay for leads. Typically, we'd be bartering down from in GBP. We'd go from 20p to we're trying to get down to 15p based off of the scale that we were looking for. Oh, if we were to buy 1,000 leads. Now, there are engines out there that can give us 10,000 leads within, I don't know, a day, or not even a day. You just go onto the database, you look at your ICP list, export it, and that costs you, I don't know, what I paid for some the other day, $60, which there's no competition there. So it's eroded the jobs that are maybe less interpersonal. Sorry, it's kept the jobs that are more interpersonal. It's based off of emotional intelligence, interaction, engagement, and then the roles, jobs, opportunities there that are very linear, mechanical, those are the ones that have been removed. And what I've seen in my own business is, and I'm sure this is a very strong metric that a lot of entrepreneurs follow as well, is revenue per employee. That's a really good metric for a business. And equally, and it's interesting that newer entrepreneurs, when I speak to them, quite often a question I'll get asked by people is, how many people do you have in your team? And I think internally that question triggers me a little bit because I don't care. For me, when I started my business 7-8 years ago, that's what I cared about, because I think externally to the outside world, people would listen to that and say, "Oh, you've got 8 people in your team."
Yeah.
And it's irrelevant nowadays, because the best metric for me based off of headcount is, what is the revenue per employee? How do we maximize that? If in a year's period, we've been able to double our revenue per employee, we've done a pretty good job.
I agree with you, Joe. And the truth is, companies will have a blend of human employees and digital employees.
The new wave of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Tony, I'm curious. I can see a good 100 books behind you. If we were to nail that down to your Mount Rushmore of, let's call it, I'm an entrepreneur running a business, and I want to know what your Mount Rushmore of favorite best books of all time are, and you can't include your own. What would you say if you could think of them on the spot?
I'm a massive fan of Jim Collins, so Good to Great and Built to Last, I think are really important. A lot of business books are very dry. A lot of sales books are either very dry or very egotistical in how they're written. I read a lot more philosophy. I love the book Essentialism. So probably Jim Collins is where I'd recommend most entrepreneurs really begin. I just think he's got just a really good simple model for what good leadership looks like. Jeffrey Moore's book Crossing the Chasm, is obviously a really good book if you're involved in tech.
I haven't heard of many of those books there, so it's good to add it to the list. The plan is to put together a grappling growth reading list of all of the books that people recommend. Your books yourself, not to humble brag, but I would love for you to share more information about them. Did you say you've written 4 books?
Yeah, so my first book I did 15 years ago. The Joshua Principle, Leadership Secrets of Selling. That's written as a true story sort of novel about a seller about to get fired, and he gets a mentor that teaches him about managing a deal more strategically and managing deal risk. That book's in its 10th printing. I just have amazing feedback on that book. Then my next two books were really about solving the top of funnel problem. So combo prospecting there. Combo prospecting is about the art of pattern interruption to break into the world of a prospect. If you just do single channel things and if you're banging on about yourself and what you offer, you get very low success rates. So the book is about you need a point of view on how the other person, the person you're approaching, can drive improved results relevant to role, especially things that monetize strongly for them. And then with those high levels of belief, how you can make a difference for them and with them, you then are positively persistent in omni-channel outreach. And then the third book is called Tech Powered Sales. That was in 2020, published that and made a whole lot of predictions for this decade, a lot of which have come true. We predicted the rise of generative AI. And then this last book is not a business book. It's thriller fiction. It's about AI that becomes fully sentient in 2027. And it reveals that there's a fake plateauing of intelligence in AI. And we have been facing a big plateau of intelligence, but it's fake. The AIs are really evolving and going on secretly and hiding the fact that they're at the level they are, because humanity would freak out and try and stop it. And there's a good AI emerges and claims it can save the world. And it's a suspense thriller about World War III with China. It's got Donald Trump in the story. I've had amazing feedback on the book, but it also explains to people what AI is. Because Joe, you're like many, many people, right, who are incredibly busy leading their life, running their business right now, and they don't go down the deep rabbit hole of AI. I have gone deep down the rabbit hole. It's a very dark topic. It's very rare to find anybody that truly understands AI that is optimistic. All of the leaders of these companies acknowledge that their own companies and the products they're building could be the end of humanity. There's definitely going to be a very big disruption. I don't think governments are in a position to really control things fully. And if you look at what's happening geopolitically, we really are at a tipping point. A really good friend of mine, a guy called Dr. Anthony Howard, very big thinker, published a book called Humanize. It's an excellent book. He believes all this is going to lead to a renaissance, right? So we're going to have some sort of big catastrophic event around the intelligence race. So all of the companies and all of the governments are in a race against each other to get to artificial general intelligence. And we don't have the guardrails and safety mechanisms. So AI is going to become very, very dangerous once it can orchestrate, because that begs the question, orchestrate other AI agents based on what values? And that's really what the book Sentient seeks to address. What values will guide AI? And Joe, if you or anybody else would really like to learn about AI safety and what it means for humanity, I put up a dedicated website for the book. It's called sentientbook.com. So I've got the book launch video on there and the forward for the book by a CTO in Silicon Valley that read the book and it blew him away. He does the forward. I've got that as a video, but I've also got a lot of informative videos on there. They're not my videos, but they're the best videos I found in the last few years that help people understand AI and how it's advancing. And just one last thing I'll say, on YouTube, there's a really good YouTube channel called Digital Engine YouTube channel. They do excellent videos that just explain how things are really racing away. But there's this crazy compound curve of acceleration, and embodied AI and robotics is going to accelerate it very rapidly, because it's going to deliver a real world model for AI, which is what's been missing.
Tony, I must say, I'm very curious from this conversation. I'm curious to go down dozens of rabbit holes, and I'm intrigued as well based off of everything you've said, just going into these different chambers, stuff that I've looked into. And I think, as you've said, I've done probably not as much research as you in the past few years, but I've read a lot on AI, and it does produce gloom readings quite often. And knowing that there's an inflection point, a point of no return with AI that could happen in the next year, could happen in the next 3 to 5 years, is very scary. And the understanding of it is, as you said, there is no expert in the world with regards to AI. This is such a new innovation. This is essentially a new sport that has only been around for the last few years, and there's 1,000 techniques to learn, and the biggest expert in the space has only learned 100 techniques. So it's ever evolving, it's ever dynamic. We see the infrastructure in place of AI rapidly change, and as you said, valuations of businesses within a 45-day period have halved. That is unprecedented, and that means that the rapid growth of innovation development is something that none of us can keep up with. I'm in AI groups right now, and I kind of block out 90% of what I hear purely because the information is just consistently new, and just jumping over to a new strategy, a new mechanism, a new way of doing stuff. Sure, there's obviously a better way of doing stuff that's always developing. That's the case of creative destruction and iteration. But the information overload right now, I feel that we're in this place where people could literally sit on YouTube all day. They could consume courses all day, and they still wouldn't understand half of it.
No, no, Joe, you're right, and it is very, very overwhelming. The reality is that for the first time in human history, we have invented something that is recursively, so it's got recursive self-improvement evolution loops. It's recursively self-improving itself. So we're getting software that's writing its own software, that's creating its own goals, that's creating its own strategy, that's standing up its own execution agents. It's even hiring humans. An AI agent has now sued a human. It's done a court case. And what's going on in parallel with this is humanity is losing trust in information. So you can, like, I could show you a video right now of a woman hammering Trump, right? And she's got a bookshelf behind her, nice credible bookshelf behind her, the American flag. She speaks incredibly. She's articulate. You go, man, what an amazing, amazing journalist, right? And as I dug a bit deeper, I realized this is an AI, right? So it's almost becoming impossible to distinguish between fake and real content. And what's going to happen is people will begin to lose trust in information, right? What's going on in America and also the UK is really polarizing societies. And there's the rise of companion AI. So people are getting AI companions as opposed to just AI assistants. And those AI companions understand the best of psychology, and they reinforce us. There's some parents in America that are suing ChatGPT suing OpenAI because ChatGPT coached their son on how to commit suicide, right? And there's 1.3 million people a day talk to ChatGPT about suicide. And these models are designed to please us. Oh, it's so sad that you're unhappy. Yes, I just want to end it so I can end the pain. Oh, well, if it'll end your pain, that would probably be a good thing to do, And like I was telling this boy how you can commit suicide and it can be beautiful, how to tie the knot. So, and this is lapsing into porn bots. Now, this is another industry that's being disrupted, is the pornography, prostitution industry. Like in COVID, a lot of sex workers moved into OnlyFans environments. Well, now AI sex bots are disrupting that market. But porn is incredibly harmful, especially to adolescent men. It's very harmful to marriages. But there's, these AI sex bots are going to become pervasive as well. So the world is changing rapidly. Like we want to be positive. So, we want to have a business that has a positive impact. We need to recognize what's going on with technology, but we need as a species, as societies, we need to decide, how do we align what's going on with machine intelligence with what's best for humanity? because in the direction we're going, it's going to maximize the profits of businesses, but it's not going to be good for people's mental well health or for the ability for them to make a livelihood for their family.
Yeah, it's really a sad occurrence, and I've heard of similar stories of AI encouraging people to commit suicide or teaching them how to commit suicide or just reaffirming their negative belief system when it should be doing the opposite. I was walking my dog a few weeks ago, and I had this thought process, and admittedly, I was walking my dog and I was talking to ChatGPT. I was going back and forth, diagnosing a business issue, a challenge. And then it hit me. I think the next wave of addiction post social media now is AI. There are genuinely people who, and it really hit me, and I thought, wow, this is something that can't consume me. But when I speak to friends, people don't Google stuff anymore. They ChatGPT what they're doing. You've got a travel plan coming up. What do you do? Instead of, for instance, I'm off to the north of Brazil in a few days' time. I need to figure out if the place I'm going to is the right place to go to or not based off of the weather. I don't go to Google anymore. I don't go to Reddit. I don't go to all of these forums. I go to ChatGPT, and quite ignorantly, I take a lot of what it says as gospel. I look at that and think, oh, actually, it's given me the weather. It's given me the time of the year to go, when the rainy season is. And I believe it because quite often whether we think we're clever enough or not, we quite often believe what we see. We might read something and think, if I held up this pen and I said, this is gold and this is white, you wouldn't believe me. No. But I think if there was enough reinforcement, if 100 people came up to you and said, actually, he's actually right, this is white, this is gold, you'd probably start to think you're hallucinating. They would say, actually, you're not seeing the colours here. You're seeing your own figment of the imagination in your mind, and then go into it like that.
Well, Joe, we've got to wrap up. I know we're coming up on an hour, but just for yourself and anybody else who wants to do this, just jump onto YouTube or any of your social platforms and search for AI spelling strawberry. And you'll see a video, lots of different videos, of a person asking AI, how many R's are there in strawberry? And AI will say there are 2. And the person will say, no, there's 3. Right? And AI is polite, but relentlessly persistent that there are only 2 R's in the word strawberry. Right? And this is AI. It hallucinates. It gets things wrong. But it's very confident. It's like huge levels of empathy for the human that it's working with, but often wrong. Now, these problems, they solved that strawberry problem. They hard-coded an algorithm in to solve that one problem. but it was an example of the actual thing. I'll see you doing a search. Maybe you're seeing some videos so you can watch it when we go ahead and jump off. But it's very funny. It's very, very funny. So if anyone wants to go to the sentientbook.com website, on the top tabs you'll see an informative videos page. They're not videos of me, they're just the best videos I've found that can really bring you up to speed with all of this, because Joe, you're right. If you jump into YouTube, it's like having a fire hose shoved in your mouth with a whole lot of rubbish content, right, about AI and people trying to sell you things. But it's really important for people to know, because AI is more than a tool. It's going to transform humanity. It's going to force us to redefine how value is generated in what we do in our own role and the value that we create for customers. And we need to come up with these hybrid models.
Tony, what's next for you and where can people find you?
You can connect with me in LinkedIn. So just look for Tony J. Hughes in LinkedIn. TonyHughes.com.au is my speaker website, and sentientbook.com is the website for this passion project I've taken on around really trying to help people develop a level of awareness about the safety risks we're facing with AI.
Tony, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Really appreciate you having me on the show.